Lesson 7. Execution Modeling. Needless to say, there are many things that need to be done in a startup. The number of tasks to get through can be simply overwhelming, and it's challenging, to say in the least, to figure out the optimal approach to complete them. A common mistake leaders make is choosing to focus on knocking out the easier tasks first. When faced with this seemingly never-ending laundry list of to-do items, they tend to move from easy tasks onto the more difficult ones, often procrastinating the toughest ones. The more effective way, instead, is to approach to-do lists based on priority. Regardless of ease or how time-consuming, priority should determine the order in which tasks are accomplished. This approach ensures that you're making the most of your most valuable resource, time. By the end of this lesson, you will better understand how to prioritize and present execution detail to your team and investors in the form of a deliverable or presentation. This is critical and will be a roadmap for you and your team to get the job done. Remember that when you're giving presentations to investors, boards, and teams, they will certainly want insight into your execution detail, including who will do what, when, where, how, and why. This step will ensure you are prepared for that. So, this lesson is all about getting things done. The first mission to focus on is who you have within your team. Delegating the right person for the right job is more important than you think. Build your team with precision and thought leadership. What are the makings of a dream team? First, the size. You don't want any one team to be too large. For example, Jeff Bezos famously has a 2-pizza rule, where he aims to feed each team at a meeting with 2 pizzas or less. If he can't, this is a warning sign. This is important because the larger a team is, the more points of communication there are, and the more work can be avoided or be left unaccountable for. Memos, emails, phone calls may fall through the cracks or get lost in translation just due to size of the team. Furthermore, a tight-knit team is easier to motivate and give incentives to. The cohesion and social element of teams that work well together also make it less expensive to give them incentives, as they tend to be more intrinsically motivated and focused on fostering collaboration and leveraging individual strengths to produce a positive outcome together, than requiring intrinsic rewards to nudge them into accomplishing the task. Assuming that you have narrowed down your team to the right people, what qualities should they have? Grit has long been touted as the secret to success by CEOs in the Valley. Grit is the ability to continue despite adversity because you can see a sound payoff. Grit is when a person is agile, teachable, persistent, resilient, and hard-working. People without grit give up easily, stop when things don't work out, are negative, don't listen or learn, and are the last to arrive and the first to leave. Next, consider complementary skill sets. You need diversity on your team. If all of you have the same skills, then you're lopsided and not balanced. Even in the world of software engineering, there are many different skill sets that are required. For example, combers or cleaners are the detail-oriented engineers who make sure that all code works exactly as needed, and they carefully annotate everything, but other engineers don't necessarily have the patience to do that work because they're focused on optimizing for speed or working on the brute force innovations to make something work that has never been done before. Hence, you should balance the engineering team to cover everything that it needs to be done. In simple terms, every startup needs a hacker, a hustler, and a hipster. A hacker is not just a software engineer, it's a personality type that creates and builds. A hustler is more than someone who is in motion or on the move. A hustler is a deal maker. Hustlers are the people who pull things together and gets the job done. A hipster is more than someone with style and is hip. Hipsters are knowledgeable and in tune with what is happening in the world, your industry, and with your specific market. There are a few ways to go about execution planning and pulling together your dream team. Do not make the common mistake of creating the boxes of a standard organization chart with job titles and filling in names in the chart. You should plan what activities need to be done first, and then see whom you already have on your team to do that work and what gaps there are. Only then will you know who else is needed on your team. Create a to-do or die list of 10 to 20 mission-critical activities. We recommend that you refer your product requirements document and prioritization matrix. You should have a list of features that you have to implement for your minimum viable product. Think about what you need to do to make that a reality. Resist the urge to list functions such as do marketing or write business plan or build financials. Instead, try to be as specific as possible. For example, complete the engineering specification for the V1 prototype that fits comfortably in a pants pocket and create comprehensive cash flows for 18 months, showing first revenue and profitability inside the window of the first $1 million of investment capital raised. If you cannot list 10 to 20 specific activities, then put the following at the top of the list. Find someone to create a top 20 mission-critical activities list. Once you have created your list, sifted and sorted the activities in order of priority, go down the list and decide who will do what. The name next to the activity needs to be a person who can actually do the work with a high degree of professionalism and quality. This is not a list of, yeah, well, I don't know how to do that, but I'm willing to give it a try. Startup entrepreneurs love saying they're generalists and do everything, but this message is not comforting to investors or boards of directors who invest in and support teams. Yes, being a generalist is important, especially if you're the founder, because you need to have a pretty good idea on how all the pieces of your company come together in order to give direction and vision to the company. But the key in effective execution of the mission-critical items lies in what I said earlier. Let me repeat this. The name next to the activity needs to be a person who can actually do the work with a high degree of professionalism and quality. If you have no name next to an activity, that tells you who is missing from your team. If you have multiple names next to an activity, that tells you where you have duplicate skills on the team. Note these gaps and start building a list of who you need to bring in for a project or maybe hire. You might even start drafting a few paragraphs that describe the type of people who you need to find to do that work and complete your team. Next, put that list on a timeline over, say, 18 to 24 months. A useful tool for this part of planning is the Gantt chart, which can be created in a simple spreadsheet. A Gantt chart is a graphical depiction of a project schedule. It consists of horizontal bars of different lengths that represent the project timeline, which includes task sequences, duration, milestones, dependencies, and start and end dates for each task. More importantly, it aids in scheduling, managing, and monitoring of critical activities. This tool makes it easy to see and read for investors, boards, and strategic others. At this point, you may be thinking, do I really need to spend so much time planning? Most plans include very little execution detail, which dramatically limits its usefulness to the entrepreneur, investors, and board. Planning, on the other hand, not to be confused with the plan itself, is incredibly valuable, as it forces you to think things through in story form strategically, tactically, and practically. But I'd rather get to work and get things done, you might hear yourself saying. The problem with this approach is that you may make progress and you may not. You might do the things that matter and you might not. You might be lucky and you might not. If you plan the activities, budget your time, make assignments, you're significantly more likely to succeed. Okay, but don't things change along the way anyway? You may then ask. This is true. Things often do change along the way and the priorities may change. However, if you plan and then track the activities of your team, you can see where inefficiencies are. Interestingly, if you plan properly and prioritize accurately, you may anticipate a change even before it presents itself and predict a possible outcome with a contingency plan in place in the event it does happen. As you get better at planning, you might even find yourself doing a little scenario planning, which is essentially flexible long-term planning. In any case, even if you must alter the plan, the Gantt chart will enable you to see the delays, if any, where time is spent doing what and which activities made the most impact. For example, how much time does my team spend on menial admin tasks versus building out our project? Furthermore, is too much time spent in meetings and discussions? You'll be surprised at the level of inefficiency that goes on in an organization that does not take time to plan. If anything, planning is actually a great tool for effectively managing time. So your next question would be, but we haven't had any major pitfalls yet. This doesn't seem necessary. Okay, so great to know things have been smooth sailing so far. But it is important to remember not to get too comfortable. This happened to many major successful companies. Firestone and Nokia are two such examples. They got too comfortable from years of success, and when they needed to pivot to major changes in their industry, they were too slow because they were not lean and innovative enough. In 2007, Nokia had a whopping 49.4% of the mobile phone market. Nokia phones could not keep up with their smartphone counterparts, and within 6 years, its market share tanked to a mere 3% because it just did not evolve fast enough. Firestone had to learn this lesson not once, but twice in the last 4 decades. In 1978, They had a product recall of 14.5 million tires, which left them open and vulnerable to the Bridgestone takeover. Then again, in the year 2000, a recall of 14.4 million units had to be made. Both times, Firestone was sluggish to deal with the initial reports of the faulty tires. Sadly, in the year 2000, their negligence led to 88 deaths and 250 injuries. Unexpected events and changes are as much a part and parcel of running a business as they are in life. You must always keep resources lean to be able to react to unexpected changes. Planning and prioritizing accurately allows for buffers to be built into the system so that when something unexpected does happen, there is a protocol and plan already in place to tackle it. Most plans and presentations focus on telling but show very little. You have to know and show how you will not just talk the talk, but do that walk. For this, it's all in the details. These steps and plans are time-consuming, but they ultimately will persuade your audience that you fully understand what needs to be done by whom, when, where, how, and why. It's not only to persuade your audience, but it 100% actually does make sure that you know what you and your team are in for, and that is key. Create a list of the top 20 mission-critical do-or-die activities that must be done, or your business will literally fail. Sort those activities by priority, from number 1 most important to least critical. Create a Gantt chart to help map and track these activities across a timeline. Then identify who on your team can credibly do each activity with a high degree of professionalism. After that, inventory which activities have no names next to them to see who needs to be brought onto the team, either as short-term or long-term, to get the work done.